Richmond recently hired a new athletic director, and we're going to find out today a little bit about his background, why he came to Richmond, and also the future of Richmond athletics. Larry Cochran joining us here today. And what we might do is we're going to try to explore everything we can involving Richmond athletics over the next several minutes. And I'd mentioned to Larry before we got started, if we go a little bit long, we may break it up into a couple of segments. But we have a lot of information to cover here in today's segment. So first off, Larry, thanks for being with us. Good to see you,
Quite
sir.
welcome. Thank you, Troy.
Tell me a little bit about your background, and for those, I know that recently you got the job here at Richmond, making that move from Evansville, but talk a little bit about your background, and then we'll talk about why you came to Richmond.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Huntingburg, Indiana. Played a lot of sports at Southridge High School. My dad was a school superintendent. Played baseball, basketball, and tennis. Sorry, not football. But tennis led me out to West Virginia, where I played out there. Actually, I played 2 years at Vincennes University, and I played at the University of Charleston. I stayed out there. Actually became the coach at the university as well as a teaching tennis pro.
Wow.
Got my master's at Marshall University in athletic administration, and stayed out there for 13 years. Told my wife when we got married we'd stay about 2, and we stayed 13. But we enjoyed it out there, and it was a different life when you're excuse me, traveling all over the country with really good young tennis players. And I got to do a lot of really neat things for a kid from a small town in Indiana. But then we started having our family. We have 2 sons, and when we started having our family, we decided it was time to get back to Indiana. And my parents at that time were in Fort Wayne, Indiana. My dad was a professor at IPFW, so we made that move, and I became a coach and a teacher in the East Allen School District, where I coached girls basketball at Heritage, coached some tennis at New Haven High School, and then the opportunity for us to go back to Southern Indiana, where we grew up, was there. My parents retired there, my wife's parents, so we went back there in 2002, where I became the AD at Evansville Bossy.
Okay.
And enjoyed that for 14 years. Had a great run there, and made a lot of friends. And obviously, being able to raise our boys around their grandparents was important.
Before we talk about your move now to Richmond, being an athletic director is certainly not an easy profession to choose. Why become an athletic director?
Well, I tell people that you have to want to do that job.
Yeah.
And you have to have a passion not only for young people, but you have to have a passion for athletics, and I've always had that. Yeah. Always. I've been nonstop. Even when I was playing 3 sports at Southridge High School, I was also the athletic trainer.
No kidding.
Because back then, you may have, that's when trainers were just getting integrated into schools. And so not only was I doing that, I was taping ankles for a lot of the teams. And the school actually sent me to a camp to learn how to do that as a student, yeah. So I've always been on the go with sports, nonstop. And so, transitioning over to being an AD, it's what I've always wanted to do. I actually do have a school administrative license so that I could be a principal. My brother is a principal in Ohio. My other brother's an assistant principal. And then I have a brother who's a lawyer. So school and administration is kind of what we've done. But at this point in my life, have not had a desire to do anything but be an AD.
Yeah. Now, how many years are we talking about here, Larry, as an athletic director?
This will be my 15th.
15th year.
Yeah, 15th. Okay. So first here, and like I said, 14 really good years in Evansville.
Okay. Why come to Richmond? What brought you here?
Me and my wife were at the point where, if we were going to make another move, the time was right then, and the Richmond job came open. I knew Peyton Stovall at Lafayette Jeff, actually had been at Evansville North and kind of learned under me a little bit down there. So I called him and, scoped it out and said, hey, what do you think about this job? I'd been looking at different options just because I needed a change.
Yeah.
Sometimes in this profession, you need a change. And when I came up here to interview and got an interview, it was not unlike the people I was around that I left. And that was important to me. A principal had been there for a while that really cares about the kids and really cares about the school, and the other folks that I interviewed with were just, like I said, a lot like the folks that that I had to make a very difficult decision in leaving.
Yeah, and you leave, I mean, Evansville, much bigger than Richmond from that standpoint. You have a lot of schools in there, in your district alone.
Right, and I think that's probably what attracted me to here is the fact that it is what I always label as a one-horse town, and what I mean by that is just one school.
Yeah.
In Evansville, you don't have that. You don't have the community. Now that can be good or bad, but I grew up that way.
Yeah.
You know, with a one high school town with a lot of support. So, you know, I had gotten to the point in Evansville where it was an uphill battle. We had the worst facilities of any of the public high schools, and they fixed some of that as I was leaving.
Yeah.
But you know, to come up here and have an 8,000 seat gym when I left a school that had maybe 2,000, we had 3 tennis courts, so we couldn't host anything. I really like hosting events.
Yeah.
So the facilities really attracted me here as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, certainly some challenges, though, coming in. Let me ask you before we continue talking about what the future may look like here. Did you come in with a certain vision, something that in your extensive background you thought, boy, I could really add to Richmond High School and the Richmond Community Schools as a whole?
I don't know if vision's the right word. I mean, I have my own thoughts, and you know, I want to look at things before I make. I don't know if I would call recommendations, but I haven't come in here with blinders on.
Yeah.
You know, to say, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this.
Yeah.
You have to know what the landscape is first.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm learning every day. You know, I mean, there's different challenges here than there were in Evansville, but I hope in time that my ideas or visions, as you said, will make a difference in a positive way, not only for the community but for coaches as well.
Now, before we talk about that, let me ask you, what have been your first impressions, even after the interview process, but now that you're in the position and your feet are wet after football in the fall season, what are your early impressions?
Well, I think, you know, we're very competitive in a lot of sports. Now, obviously, the community wants to be competitive in football and boys basketball, and I understand that. But when you have a tennis team that makes it all the way to the semi-state, you have a girls golf team that finished second in the NCC and made it to the regional, second in the sectional. You had a girls soccer team that finished third in the NCC. The NCC's tough. I mean, you know, the NCC is right up there with the conference I left. I mean, the SIC's tough.
Yeah.
And the SIC won 3 state championships in soccer.
Wow.
You know, and so, I mean, I left a very tough competitive conference, so that doesn't scare me from the standpoint of, but we have really good kids here and really good teams. Obviously, we've got some teams that need to make some improvements, but you know, you got a state championship diver. I mean, you know, finally Carmel didn't win in swimming in one event. You know, so you know, I think there's a lot to be proud of long before I got here.
Yeah. Do you, from that standpoint, as you said, there are certain, or at least people have certain expectations with football. They have a certain expectation with basketball and such. Do you have a certain expectation, and then do you look at the coaches and say, do you have a certain way that you say, listen, we have expectations for you guys as well?
Well, I think you have to have high expectations of everything that you do. You know, we have to have high expectations of students' academic achievements, and you want high expectations in athletics, but there has to be a learning curve of getting there. You know, I have my own suggestions and ideas about how we get there, and obviously we want to do it the right way. I think in building a football program, it's, you know, at any school, it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
You know, and it starts with, you know, younger folks and younger kids really wanting to play for those coaches that are at the high school level, and they have to develop that relationship, and that takes some time.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to be just snap our fingers and wham, it happens. And so, you know, another sport I failed to mention, and I don't want to ever leave anybody out, but, you know, our volleyball team had one of the best seasons they've ever had. I mean, they were third in the NCC. I think they were 21-10. Obviously, they drew a tough sectional opponent out of the hat, but, you know, beating Muncie Central 3 times when they hadn't done it in 20-something years. So I mean, there are really, competitive programs here.
But there are a lot of people, and I say a lot of people, I've been here a long time, and I hear those people that are from the 70s, 80s, 90s era that say, boy, it's just not the same. What's wrong with Richmond High School athletics? Because they'll say we used to compete always on a state level, but now we're not. And I try to tell them, well, times have changed. First off, our population level isn't what it used to be, and so you're competing a little bit different. Is that kind of comparing apples and oranges at this stage?
I think it can be comparing that, but I think you also have to remember there's two factors there. You don't have class sports anymore. I mean, you have class sports now.
Yeah.
You didn't have that in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s.
That's right.
That didn't happen until the middle 90s. And the second thing is that even though there's only one high school here, throughout the state, and they can call it whatever they want to, but basically to me it's open enrollment.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, you can say it's not, but it is.
Yeah.
And so you have other schools that are building up and grabbing kids from other areas.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to mention schools, but there are kids that are traveling 45 minutes to an hour around the Beltway of Indianapolis to get to certain schools.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, that makes it more difficult on a Richmond.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the one school towns.
Yeah.
To reach that next level.
Yeah. Well, in the IHSAA really can't do anything about
They
it.
can't.
Right?
No, that's not an IHSAA issue.
Right.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be if they want to start making it even more so from their success factor ratio. They might be able to add something to that to make it more difficult.
Yeah.
But I think it is comparing apples to oranges. I mean, we all want to win state championships, but at the end of the day, you want to be competitive. You want to get kids out of tournaments, individually or team-wise, depending on the sport. You want to win sectionals and then see where it goes from there.
Yeah. If I may, you talk about, certainly when I think about success, you need participation, as you said, and that comes with the relationship for the coaches and their programs from top to bottom. We have seen a little bit of a decline in players taking part. Wrestling might be a good example of what happened last year. They were holding on at the very end to have enough kids to wrestle. Football team is back on the upswing now after declining over the last several years. How do you get more kids to participate in athletics these days at the high school level?
Well, that just like I said, it comes with high school coaches developing relationships when they're younger.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, numbers also are predicated based on specialization. Where now you've got this one focus sometimes, not only of the parent but the kid and their opportunities of, okay, what can I really get good at to maybe get some of my college paid for?
Yeah.
And therefore, I'm not going to be that 3-sport athlete.
Yeah.
There used to be a ton of 3-sport athletes,
Yeah.
and there's not now. And that's everywhere. That's not just Richmond.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's everywhere.
Yeah.
And, you're getting more maybe some 2-sport athletes, but not the 3. And so that hurts your numbers.
Yeah.
And it really does. And so I don't know, obviously we want to increase that. I think that obviously AAU programs or those type of programs have hurt other sports. In particular, there's a big decline in the state in girls basketball participation.
Oh, I didn't know that, really.
Yeah, there's not a lot. I mean, used to have freshman teams.
Yeah.
And most of them now just have JV and varsity. I mean, there's some that still have freshmen. But I think that, volleyball season just ended last week, right? Well, guess what starts in about another 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Travel volleyball.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. And so they, as you say, specialize, and you don't see them play basketball.
I know in Evansville last year, and the coaches accepted it because they wanted the young lady to play, but she missed the first weekend of basketball season for travel soccer, and another one missed one in the middle of December for travel volleyball.
Yeah.
And if they would have taken the stance, no, you're not going to do that, then they wouldn't have had them at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you've got to figure out what you want.
Yeah.
Those coaches down there realized, hey, we need those 2 young ladies to try to be as competitive as we can, so we're going to let them go. But, back in our day, the coach would have said, take your stuff and go.
Yeah.
You know, you got to commit to us for this length of time.
And back in our day, there wasn't really such a thing. I mean,
No,
you take
there was
away all
not.
the different sports
No,
that are no
yeah,
longer.
there was not. I mean, we played our summer basketball with our coach in our gym. We
Yeah.
didn't play 40 games.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy to me.
Yeah. Has AAU kind of, well, we kind of specialized. Speaking of that, has AAU kind of ruined?
I don't know if it's ruined it, but I think that one thing that parents need to understand is that these kids now, coaches don't come in to watch kids at their high school games too much.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, it's catching like soccer. Let's talk soccer for a second, for instance. Boys and girls soccer's played at the same time the college season is.
Yeah.
So when are those coaches who are recruiting kids really going to get out to watch your games?
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah.
But now when soccer's over, and now all of a sudden you got travel soccer in December, January, February, March, that's when those coaches are what I would consider their recruiting season.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's when they're going to go see. Well, basketball's not a whole lot different.
Yeah. You're right.
You know, I mean, these big, but basketball's got themselves in a little hot water with the Nikes and the Adidases and things that are going on with that. But at the end of the day, I mean, a lot of the recruiting, whether it be softball, I know a young lady down in the southern part of the state that got a Division I full scholarship, just is signing and never played one inning for her high school team.
Really? No kidding. Wow. Times have changed, haven't they?
They have.
What do you want to see happen? I want to go back, if I can, before we talk about future. The Tiernan Center's 34 years old, 33 years old.
33, I think somebody told me.
Yeah, starting to show its age a little bit. I know that there is some talk about what to do, not only just with the high school itself, but overall, the picture. But let's get specific about facilities here. Tiernan Center, is there something in the future where things get brightened up a little bit and such? Or
Well, I mean, I think there has to be a plan.
yeah,
You know, I can't answer specifically what you're asking, but there's got to be a plan. You have to have a plan for having a nice facility.
Yeah.
You know, you have to have a plan when the turf wears out, whether that be 15 years, 10 years, you know, whatever. And I think athletic facilities have to be part of whatever school plan there is. Yeah. And I'm sure that at some point, you know, I will get that conversation,
Yeah.
you know, with my bosses and people above me that, you know, what do you want me to input for your long-term plan?
yeah, yeah,
You know, and so I can't be specific to that, but you do have to, you know, you don't want to end up with Anderson and Muncie where, you know, you've got this great facility that got dilapidated.
yeah, exactly.
You know, and fortunately this facility's a little newer than those, I think, that got dilapidated.
Yeah,
But you still have to have a plan.
Yeah.
And, you know, I will, I'm sure, be asked about what my thoughts are on that plan by those folks above me.
you mentioned the North Central Conference, and it went through a change a few years ago. The idea at that time was to cut down on travel, the division of the whole thing. I don't know that that's worked.
No.
Are you seeing that Richmond's going to, in the future, stay in the North Central Conference? Is there an idea to move on or at least try to explore going somewhere else? Is the travel situation and the cost of all the travel going to cut down and taking kids out of class? Where do you see Richmond in the NCC in the future?
I haven't been here long enough to make that total assessment, Troy. I mean, I do see travel as a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. I can't imagine, you know, when they did what they did to think that travel was going to be fixed that way.
Yeah.
You know, travel is a problem. I think, you know, maybe, and again, I'm not been here long enough to make a total determination, but, you know, maybe all the sports need to be in divisions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not just a few that we have.
Yeah.
You know, and they do that in some other areas.
Yeah.
You know, I've looked at that. You know, the problem with conferences, and we looked at this down at the Southern Indiana Athletic Conference, because the Terre Haute schools a few years back got pushed out of the MIC. They didn't want them anymore.
Yeah.
Well, you know, football predicates everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does, and that's everywhere
Yeah.
when it comes to conferences. And, in Evansville, they had a good setup where we have 8 teams. You get 7 conference games, 2 non-conference games the first 2 weeks of the year. Why should we change that to add Terre Haute?
Exactly.
And that was their attitude.
Yeah.
Most people's attitudes in that conference. And I'm not so unsure that the schools in the NCC wouldn't be facing the same uphill battle.
Yeah.
Where do you go?
Yeah.
I've looked at the conferences around us. The schools that got out when they did got an invitation. Mm-hmm. And those conferences then set themselves up for 8 or 7 perfectly aligned for football.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how it works. And I'm not sure around right now. I haven't, I'm heavily involved with the State Athletic Directors Association. And right now there's not a lot of talk about conferences realigning like there was about 3 years ago, because they've done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of come and gone. And now these conferences, they get set all based on football scheduling and predicating that. And I'm not sure which direction Richmond goes. Do you become a Notre Dame and try to be independent? That's tough to do.
Yeah, that's probably the way out. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, let me ask you then, from that standpoint, it sounds, and again, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but it sounds like to me you've put some thought into this about, can we play Anderson, Muncie Central, and split those divisions and have maybe a couple more non-conference games instead of going to Lafayette twice, or like in basketball, going to Logan and Lafayette twice?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm looking at everything, so that's part of my scope right now, is looking at those things to see where that might take us. But at the end of the day, in the NCC, you got to have people to agree with you.
Yeah, that's right.
You do, and I always think an X factor there is what's going to happen with Indianapolis Tech.
Yeah,
they're getting ready to go enrollment size from 2,500 to 3,500.
No kidding.
Yes.
Wow.
With those 2 closures.
No
yeah,
kidding.
With Northwest and Broad Ripple being closed. Yep. I think their enrollment, at least that's the talk, and the scuttlebutt is, because those 2 schools are going to close, so then IPS sends those in different directions, and so their enrollment, may go way up, but yet with 2,500, they struggle to field teams except for football and basketball.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing.
So, what's going to happen with Indianapolis Tech? They're getting a new principal. You don't know what their administration's thinking about. We're the only school in the NCC.
Yeah.
Why are we traveling everywhere?
Yeah, exactly. So they'll be thinking. And that's the other thing I think about that. If they went to that level, too, of enrollment, I think of Lafayette Jeff and those. And Richmond's a 4A. You mentioned football. Mm-hmm. We're a 4A. They're 6As. Or well, they will be if they go.
Yeah, if they go that high.
So to me, there's such a gap there that I guess I don't understand how that can be evened out, and we all look at it and go, well, then some people say, why don't you find something else instead of being in a conference with 6A schools?
Right, but at the same time, again, finding who's going to invite you.
Yeah. Well, you need to work on your influence there and be some friends with some of those guys.
Well, I'm working on that.
I know you are.
I'm working on that, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to football scheduling.
Yeah.
It really does. And
wow.
Maybe people haven't really ever looked at that, but that's what it comes down to.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I don't think most of us knew that. Yeah, it's very true. All right, listen, you're a busy man, and I know I appreciate your time today, but let's now, I'm going to go back to that word vision, and I hate to use that, but you're working on a lot of different things at once, and I know that's a hard thing to do. Mm-hmm. Where do you see Richmond in the future? Let's even go in the next couple of years. And I know that's kind of a broad question to ask when I say, what do you see? But what do you see here at Richmond High School?
Are you asking for the entire athletic program?
Yeah, let's.
What I hope to see is over the course of the next couple of years that coaches develop relationships so that numbers continue to grow from 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade, and that our coaches are impacting at that level so that those kids want to say, man, I can't wait to get to that high school and play for that coach.
Yeah. Exactly.
When I was growing up, I wanted to play for Gary Duncan.
Okay.
He was my high school basketball coach, and we all knew in the 5th grade that's who we wanted to play for.
Okay.
And I just use that as an example that when you have kids if you have coaches who can develop that when they're that young, man, I can't wait to go play for that guy, then that rubs off on a lot of things.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so, I hope those numbers get up. Obviously, we want to be competitive in everything.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've got to make improvements in some of our teams.
Yeah.
But really, I want coaches who are developing relationships.
Yeah.
And if they're developing relationships, then our vision of being competitive, yeah, we all want to win a state championship in our sports, but at the end of the day, how many get to?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not many.
Not many. Yeah.
You know, I mean, you not only you have to be good, but you have to be a little lucky.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you know, I just went through that with boys basketball at Bossy. I mean, we step on the end line with 58 seconds to go to take the lead against Marion 2 years ago, and I was standing right there, and we stepped right on that line.
Wow.
You know, and then it goes from instead of us being up 1 to them up 3 on the next possession. That's a little luck.
It is. Yeah.
You know, I mean, and so, but we want to be able to get our programs to the point that not only are they successful by the end of the year, but have a chance to win and then have a chance to get a little lucky.
Yeah. And the other thing about those relationships is they last a lifetime.
Forever.
So, yeah.
I mean, forever. And that's, you know, I see when kids are emotionally upset after they lose, a lot of times that shows you more about your program than anything.
Yeah.
You know, that, man, they don't get to put that jersey on, or that, you know, I don't get to suit up one more time.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you see that, that means that coach has had an impact.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Larry, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Appreciate it as always.
that. Okay, Troy.
Hey, I don't want to say you have an open door policy, but I'm sure you're pretty open to talking to a lot of people.
I have done that, and,
yeah.
and we'll continue. And I'm not going to be able to solve everyone's dilemmas per se, but I will listen.
Yeah.
We'll take into consideration, you know, and continue to try to make things better for this high school.
I think you have already.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Larry Cochran joining us, and again, with I know there's a lot of questions out there, but as Larry said, he'd be glad to answer anything he can, and we'll keep you updated as long as we can and as much as we can right here on Radio Troy Digital Sports.